Hello, thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Demystifying Money. I'm your host, Misty Lynch, and I am joined today by Stephanie Pazniokas. She's the founder of SJP Health and Wellness. And we're going to talk today about our health, not just our financial health, but our actual physical health, which helps us in all different ways, especially when it comes to having the energy to do our jobs and to do all of the things that we need to get done in a day, which I know for a lot of you, including myself, when it comes to this season in the fall, where we've got back to school, we've got last quarter of the year, we've got holidays. There's so many things that we all have on our list that we need to get done. So I thought it'd be a great time to talk about ways that we could protect our health this season and also maybe find some more energy to get these things done. So Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here.
This episode of Demystifying Money with Misty Lynch is proudly sponsored by Soundview Financial Advisors. Visit www.soundviewfinancialadvisors.com to learn more.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your path to entrepreneurship. I know, you probably didn't know you'd be a health and wellness coach your entire life, but I do think it's a really interesting field and a lot of people are interested in improving that area of their life. But how did you, what did you start out thinking your career would be and how did you end up where you are today?
So actually, when I left high school, I went into college for psychobiology. I was very, very interested in the biological basis of behavior. I went into grad school for neuroscience, and I was really fascinated with a field called psychoneuroendocrinology, which is how our experience, our psychology, our hormonal system, and our neurotransmitters, our brain, all work together to give us an experience, right? We can have very similar heart rate increase and when we're excited or mad. Why do we feel it differently, right? So all of those types of things were very interesting to me. And but I spent some time in a neuroscience lab, and then I got married and I had kids, and I said, okay, I'll continue my PhD after my kids get older. And then I said, well, I can't really be in a lab. The hours are completely unpredictable for me having children at home. For me, that wasn't a choice that I made. So I actually ended up working in the life science industry from the corporate side. And I did that for a long time. I was traveling all over the United States from anywhere from 2 to 14 days with small children. And so in the process of this and in the process of that very high stress job that I was in and not being able to, just traveling all the time, eating out all the time, I lost my health in a very big way. So by the time 2014 hit, I was around 190 pounds. And I don't, if you can see the video, if you're listening on the podcast, I am currently 130, 135. I sort of go between there, which is my perfect weight for me and what I really love. But what happened in between then and now, right? I was pre-diabetic. My blood pressure was high. My legs were swelling. I had pain shooting up and down my back. My jaw wouldn't close. I had so many issues. And my husband just wanted me to find another job. And I eventually did, and it was a different industry altogether, but that gave me the space to start really thinking about how to fix my health. And so my first round was what everybody else did, eat less, move more, right? And I busted my butt, starving myself and working out 7 days a week, and was miserable, and everybody hated being around me. It wasn't pretty. And it was actually really much what I know now. That was so incredibly stressful for my body that I did yo-yo for about 4 years, and I kept getting back up to 170, 175. And then losing my energy again. And finally I said, you know what? My whole background is in science. Why am I just reading what everybody else is saying? Let me go back to what I already know. And so I did that. And at a period, so I did that. I figured everything out. I sort of started from scratch. I was able to so from 2018 to now, I have been rock solid. There's just no yo-yoing. There's no energy dips. And now I'm 49 and I feel like I'm 30. Like I probably feel better. Actually, I feel better than I did when I was 30. So, I look at all of that and I said, that my mom got sick with cancer right at the beginning of COVID. And my oldest daughter became pregnant, and she was going through some health issues as well. And all around that time, I had already pursued my health coaching certification because I knew that I wanted to do something that would still light me up inside from a science and geeky standpoint, but that really did make a bigger impact on the world than what I was doing. And and you just see the statistics coming out. They got worse and worse every year, to the point where even now 93% of America is failing in one of the 5 metabolic health markers and is considered metabolically unhealthy. And that's frightening, because that particular path is the path to heart disease, diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, inflammation diseases, cancer, Alzheimer's, all of it. They're all non-communicable diseases of inflammation that start with that. And what is metabolism? Metabolism is how our body takes the food we eat and converts it into our energy, which is kind of the basis of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that in one way or another. Like, I talk to a lot of people when they get to the point where they're looking at the money, and that seems to be like the bottom line, especially with these jobs. If it's a high stress job, or it's a good job that they love, it's high paying, but they feel like other parts of their life are not under control. And so sometimes we can look at that, but also, for people, it's interesting, because a lot of times I do hear when people make these big career shifts that they have to quit, they start, they build something back up. And then there's some people where I want to figure out how we can help them before it gets to that breaking point where they have to leave, where their family's begging them to leave. Because I know a lot of us feel like we're approaching that, or we know, or we've been there before in other roles. And so I think that what you're talking about is these foundational things, are getting certain things under control, understanding your body and how it works. We can maybe it's not the job controlling it or what we need to do. It could be us controlling how we feel, and then how much we're able to accomplish. Because a lot of people are like, but I can't just quit. I can't just do this. Like, too many people rely on me financially, and then they're burning out, or they're getting these diseases, and they're getting sick eventually. Their body eventually will react or respond.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear from you, about some of these foundations, some of these things that, like, wherever you're at, whatever the people listening, whatever they're doing, like, what can we do to start to get these things under control so we can start feeling better in spite of whatever the environment we're in?
Absolutely. So I want to say, I had an opportunity to test this in another very, very high stress job. So the between 2018 and 2021 or so, I was working at a startup company at a high stress job, and another company that was very high stress. But I had at that point figured everything out. I was so much more able to do those jobs with energy and still be able to come home and have it separate in a way that I couldn't do before. So these things that I'm going to talk about are very, very helpful in a high stress job situation. It's just that I left those to do this once my family became needing me in a more direct way. So absolutely. Now, everything really comes down to stress. And I don't just mean the psychosocial stress, right? All of the foundations that you'll hear any, good health coach talk about, right? These foundational things, all of them ultimately culminate in stress, because when our body breaks down or we're not doing well, it is because our body is stressed at a cellular level. It's a biochemical fear response, if you want to call it that. And so that comes right down into our cells. So whether it's psychosocial stress, work stress, right, relationships, but also if we're eating certain foods that have chemical additives or things in it that our body actually doesn't know how to deal with. Anything that we created in a lab in the last 7,500 years, we've had tens of thousands of years of humanity not knowing what to do with those compounds. They didn't exist, right? We don't know what to do with them now. And so they end up having unintended consequences, typically on our endocrine system, and are called obesogens, or they actually impact our fertility. They activate our immune system to some level, or oxidative stress, that cellular stress. And we recognize them as foreign, and we now have to do something about it. That just increases a stress burden on our body, in addition to the psychosocial stress. if we're not eating the kinds of foods we need to support our body's function, we will also have an increased stress in our cells because we're trying to run a company short-staffed, right? We don't have what our body needs.
Yeah. And I think that that's interesting because a lot of times when we're busy, you're right, we grab something quick or we're kind of, we're not able to, because I think about the chemicals and the foods and sometimes it's actually overwhelming when I think about like all of the things that we're eating that we shouldn't, the plastics, and it's almost overwhelmingly
Mhm.
scary that it's like, well, what can we even do? Like what is, what are some things that we can do because it feels like it's everywhere and unavoidable, which might not be true. But when we look at the numbers, that 93% number that you mentioned before, like it can be people who really don't understand or are trying to get by and like these food chemicals have just kind of gotten into really feels like everything. So what are some things if somebody, if they're just trying to make one change, like if they're trying to make a change in their diet or something like in their what they're consuming, what are some simple things we could do that can improve that if even if we're just starting to learn how to do better rather than saying we have to go all organic everything and change
Yeah.
everything about our routines and our habits because that can be very tricky.
Absolutely. You know what? We can't change it all at once because if we try, interestingly and ironically enough, it actually creates a fear response in our brain and our body is trying to adjust to too many things all at once. And so then it's another reason why people are just like, I give up because it is overwhelming. Our brain is like, I can't do all this at the same time. So from a neuroscience perspective, we're really trying to make small, consistent changes over time so that our brain rewires slowly and surely, and we start just automatically making better decisions. So as far as food is concerned, one of the most important things that people, and this is very controversial, I know out there, but a high quality protein source is really, really important. Your body has over, 70,000 different kinds of proteins that it makes between enzymes and it's everything. Our whole entire body, your DNA is transcribed and made into protein. That's what it does. So we need it. It's not just for our muscle. Your
Mhm.
bone is 50% protein. There's protein everywhere in your body. And so it is important to have enough of that. And a lot of times when people are having problems with cravings, and I look at them, I'm working with them, it's almost always that they're not getting enough protein because that's the most satiating ingredient because that's the thing that your brain is asking for. It keeps hitting the hunger button. Wait, I didn't get what I needed. My Instacart order isn't filled. Eat, eat, eat. And we are eating all of these things, but we're not eating what it wants. It can't tell us, by the way, you need protein, right? So that's one of the most important things is just whole food sources of protein, the best you can. I'm not a huge fan of protein
Yeah.
supplementation because it's hard to find. There are good brands out there, but there's so many bad brands.
Mhm.
But some is better than nothing, right?
Okay.
So the other thing is really as best as you can, trying to keep more toward foods that look like they did when they came out of the ground without a whole lot of additives, right? So, it's easy to say, hey, if you look at the ingredients label and you could literally buy everything that's in there in the store and make it yourself at home, that's a pretty good bet. If there's a whole bunch of stuff on there you can't pronounce, it's a pretty good bet it's considered to be, what we call now ultra processed food, which just means that it has a lot of chemicals. And ultra processed food is an industrially formulated food. It's made in a food lab. It takes a whole bunch of ingredients that used to be more real, breaks them apart into pieces and recombines them into things that weren't ever something that we would have found in nature. So again, our body doesn't know what to do with it. It scrambles the signals to our brain. It doesn't have the right hunger and satiety cues. And so it ends up, causing stress. So we want to just focus on things that are simple,
Mhm.
like simple ingredients, whole food, real food ingredients. And if you are getting veggies, you can get fresh frozen veggies, and even fresh frozen organic veggies aren't as expensive as the fresh version in your store. And sometimes they're healthier
Yeah.
because they're not trying to travel 3,000 miles as fresh and then just getting less and less
Mhm.
good on the way, right? So
Yeah. No,
um,
and I think a lot of people, and I've seen this too when we're looking at budgets, where we look at food budget and like sometimes making these shifts, even if it's just eating, like you mentioned, that protein, that good, like solid source of protein, or simpler ingredients or fresher food, more labeled. It's not necessarily always that much more expensive. I think a lot of times in our heads we believe it's going to be. like we think it is. And then we look at it and we're already spending quite a bit at the grocery store. So it's like, if you're spending it anyway, maybe there's less, but also maybe you're fuller. It can be a shift. I do think we sometimes feel like, oh, this is going to cost a fortune. I'm going to spend my whole paycheck here at the store. And I don't know if I think we should test that. I think we should think about it, especially if we're just trying to figure out a way out of it, like out of changing, because money's usually a really good reason. Well, we'll say, well, we can't do that because we can only afford this, when we might be able to make those swaps a little healthier.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I do actually do a pantry audit where I go through and I see what people are eating. The thing is when you're not eating the right foods, you eat a lot more of them, and you assume that you have to buy the same amount of real food as you did of all the other foods. It's not true. You actually end up not eating as much because it's so much more nutrient dense that your brain checks off, hey, I'm done. I got what I needed. I don't need to keep going. So it's really quite amazing. And there's so many things that you can very easily make at home that are very healthy that cost a lot in the store, actually. So that's one of the things that I work with my clients on. But I want to say though, I want to pop in to say that's a very practical thing when it comes to your food and fueling. But there's so many more things we can do to turn our mitochondria back on. But what do I mean when I say that? So I kind of want to give, if you don't mind, a little background on how our body produces energy.
Sure.
And that might help people understand with the rest of what I'm talking about, why it works the way it works. So, we create energy in almost every cell of our body. And we have these little things in our cells called mitochondria. That's the powerhouse of it, the little cell engine. But we have we can have 5,000 of them in a single cell if it's a heart cell or a brain cell. We can have a couple hundred. We can have, it ranges. The more energy that cell needs to use, the more mitochondria it's supposed to have. But the thing is that it's only going to make them if you use them. You don't want a bunch of extra workers on hand if you don't need them, right? You don't want a whole bunch of hired hands sitting on the sidelines. So your body's going to make what it uses, right? So that's one big principle, is if you don't use it, you lose it, right? But these mitochondria, provide 90% of the energy in your body. And the most interesting information we have is that when you're 70, you have half the mitochondria that you did when you were 40. When you're 40, you have half the mitochondria you did when you were 20. If you do nothing different. But that doesn't have to be the case, because you can have as many mitochondria at 70 as 20 if you are keeping them stimulated and you're telling your body, oh no, I still need you, right? And so they're like little car engines in our body that work by consuming fuel. Our car engine consumes fuel and oxygen to make a combustion. Our mitochondria consume fuel and oxygen to make energy and output carbon dioxide. And so that's the good part of it. But the bad part of it is, just like an engine that has pollutant exhaust, our mitochondria have pollutant exhaust, and they're free radicals. They're little guys that kind of do damage in our body. And those are oxidants, right? So when we have antioxidants, like in our food, we can neutralize that exhaust in our cells. So that's one source of cellular stress, is when we're eating food that is a dirty burn, a bad fuel, right? We'll create more of these. But when we have food that's nutrient dense and have a lot of antioxidants, so that's the other thing, when it comes to food, is having food that basically is like engine coolant, right? It's going to neutralize.
Like, what is an example?
So an example of those foods are anything high in, say, vitamin C is an antioxidant, right? So a lot of your vegetables, especially leafy greens and cruciferous, which actually do have vitamin C that you don't really notice. Cabbage has a lot of vitamin C, and cabbage is an inexpensive vegetable, for example. But most of your bright, colorful, fibrous vegetables will have some level of antioxidants and polyphenols that are acting as antioxidants. So that's that's fantastic. So, and then we have foods that have precursors to antioxidants we make in our body. So onions and garlic and anything with cysteine or sulfur in them will be something that will help us produce those antioxidants and that coolant. So basically anything with, whether it's the food we eat creating the fuel part of it, or the food we eat creating the other aspects of that cellular engine and helping it run cleanly and smoothly, everything that we do that is going to create energy in our body does it by either increasing the number of mitochondria, right?
Mhm.
It does it by increasing the size of the mitochondria, like bulking up, right? Or the efficiency, running well, so those antioxidants, the health, the overall health and robustness of the mitochondria, or they prevent damage to the mitochondria, right? So those 5 things. And so that kind of goes back, that first one we talked about when it comes to the food, and it's not just the food, right? It could be stuff that's in our personal care products that are actually getting absorbed into our body that we're then having to fight against. You're increasing the stress response. Oh, foreign chemicals in the body, I now have to figure out what to do with, right? So do no harm, right?
Mhm.
You can't rebuild a house after a house fire if you're constantly setting the fire behind you, right? So the very first step is to just reduce that overall burden of stress in the body by working on that aspect of it. So it's an easy place for a lot of people to start. I love starting with a pantry makeover because I can say, listen, you don't have to change how you cook or anything. If we just swap this thing for that thing, you get to just use a different thing in the ingredients, but you don't change your recipes. You're just going to go on every day, but you're going to have a better version.
Okay.
Right. And it might be that you make your own something in 5 minutes instead of spending $8 on a good version of that thing in the store. Right.
Okay.
But yeah. But aside from the doing no harm, because I think that we kind of talked about that already, there's the obvious thing, is the other things that do harm that we don't think of it, things we might not be doing. So if you're not moving, if you're very sedentary, now your mitochondrial number are going down because if you're not using that energy, your body's not going to be trying to create the opportunity to make that energy. So one of the reasons why a sedentary lifestyle is so dangerous is because it gives us a lack of stimulation to keep our body saying, well, I need those mitochondria. It's going to say, I'm not going to waste energy making them. I'm not moving. I'm not doing anything, right? So moving. So really an energy disruptor is being sedentary. Another energy disruptor is not getting morning sunlight, right? So if we're not resetting our circadian rhythm and having our body kind of run like the well-oiled machine it is, because that's an important aspect. Again, we used to get light all the time. Now we're not really getting light anymore. I think it's something like 7 minutes a day spent outside on average anymore, right?
Okay.
So those types of things. But the bottom line is we want to try to get rid of some of those energy disruptors first. And I talk about what those are in my group and some of my classes and things like that. But let's talk about some of those high energy hacks. Like, what are the things we can do to boost it, right?
Yeah, because I think, a lot of times I understand the not moving. And I think people do know that. People do try to, and I don't know if this is the same for everyone. People have heard like you're supposed to get 10,000 steps a day and I think sometimes people are like, well, that's hard. I'm at my desk. But I think like any movement, right? Any choices you can make to move more is going to be the better option, right? Or
they've actually shown like if you're a fidgeter and you don't sit still very well and you're always moving or bouncing your legs, that actually makes a difference.
Yeah. And then with the sunlight, it might be intentionally taking those breaks and I do think we spend a lot I know, especially, and we're getting to that point here in New England where we just changed the clocks. It is going to be dark at 4:30, 5 o'clock at night. And then a lot of people are going to work when it's their commute, it's dark. And so it feels like they're not seeing that. So I think those, even if it's when you have your lunch or anytime you're able to actually just get away from your desk. It's so important. Even people who are working from home, I feel like sometimes are still not moving from that one spot all day. And I think that that's with the movement and with the sunlight, it definitely does have an impact. I've definitely seen it even with your mood, right? Taking those
Absolutely.
walks and those breaks they can be, this is not expensive. This is not needing a treadmill under your desk. This is just getting up and going.
Yeah, moving. And I actually, in my calendar, I have my lunch in my calendar, but it doesn't just say eat lunch. It says lunch, go outside and walk around. Like I eat lunch outside as often as I possibly can, even if it's cold. And I'll tell you why in just a minute, because that's another high energy hack. But, you know, yeah, moving, getting outside, and it could just any kind of movement. Park a little further from where you're going. Like just try to move more in general. It doesn't have to be I have to, get my clothes changed and drive 30 minutes to the gym. And then I have to work out for an hour and then I get home and then I got to make dinner and then well, that's not helping. Right. So it doesn't have to look like that. And it's not practical for some people,
Right.
but you can find ways to move. Um,
So let's talk
also
about
sleep.
those high energy hacks. Okay. Cause you were
Yeah.
going to talk about, I'm wondering if that's one of those things, but, yeah, we should like get into those. Those are some easy things, inexpensive things that we can do. What are some of those other things that we're able to control that we can, that we can do
sleeping.
without having to change our whole life? Yeah.
Sleeping. I mean, and the thing is that we disrupt our sleep a lot with being on our phones too late or having blue light or trying to watch TV until we fall asleep. What that does is that disrupts melatonin production in our body. So we don't sleep as deeply or as well. And that deep sleep and good quality sleep is absolutely critical to good mitochondrial function and energy. It's not just because, hey, sleeping is great and it feels good the next day, but it's optional. Sleeping isn't optional. It's not optional for your health. They've linked cancer to to artificial light at night. I mean, they could, like in just even outside. So, but really working on getting better sleep and having a good sleep hygiene practice, turning off the screens and allowing your body to relax. So you're now reducing that psychosocial stress. You're reducing your, that blue light. You're giving your body a space to really wind down and relax into bedtime. And there's a whole bunch of things you can do to boost your, you can make sure the room is dark. It has to be dark because we have photoreceptors in our cells. And we can, so we want to make sure our room is dark. We want to make sure it's cool. So the ideal sleeping temperature is between 62 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So if it's hotter than that, you're not going to probably get as deep of a sleep. Having, like I said, not having that blue light. So those are just a few of the most important things. But the other thing is exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And exercise does it in 3 different ways. So if you do something like high intensity interval training, that's going to be great for the growth of your mitochondria and increasing their efficiency, right? So how well they're getting oxygen from the air you breathe into the cell and into the mitochondria, right? But also their size. But aerobic exercise also helps by enhancing the circulatory system directly, and allowing there to be more efficient transport and a better beating of your heart. And then you've got, strength and resistance training, which help you create more mitochondria, so increasing the number, but also help you break down old mitochondria, resistance training especially, getting rid of the old ones that aren't working. They should retire. Let's let them retire from business and let some new blood come in, new mitochondria come in. And so that process is called mitophagy. And so exercise is a really great high energy hack, but some people can't do it. Some people have so many mitochondria offline that any exercise is more stress. Mm-hmm. So there are some other things that you can do first to start building that energy. Some of it was the food we talked about, the sleep we can do. And once you're starting to get these going, then you might be able to add an exercise. But another is a breathing. Mm-hmm. So there's a high energy hack called intermittent hypoxic training. And you're basically breathing in a way that forces your body into a low oxygen mode. And then you have a period of regular oxygen, and then you have a period of low oxygen, and your body starts going, oh my gosh, I'm starting to have to work under periods of low oxygen. By the way, this is exactly what happens at high altitudes. Mm-hmm. So intermittent hypoxia training has been something that they've done to train people to go to high altitudes, but it works because it increases the efficiency of your mitochondria. That's why it works, so that you can get more out of less oxygen. You're working smarter with what you have because there's not a whole bunch of excess. So that is a fantastic breathing practice, but it's also a mild stressor to your body. Mm-hmm. So it's a mild stressor that slightly increases oxidative stress, which allows us to activate our antioxidant system and anti-inflammatory system to meet the demand. So it's not too much stress. It's like with the Goldilocks zone. Mm-hmm. So that's another way. And a lot of high energy hacks work with that principle, that mild stressor principle.
I think I read a book recently, Breath by James Nestor. I'm not sure if you've ever read it, but it was basically about breathing. And it was interesting because I'll have, there'll be, breathing and meditation, but this was actually like, on the science side that you're speaking of, where it was talking about like sleep apnea, all of these conditions, these conditions that, and then kind of studying how like other civilizations have used breath work like to, I mean, it was super interesting to hear about like how certain conditions have been treated or improved just by controlling your breathing intention.
Yeah.
It was wild, and I was interested in learning more about that. But I do think these are things that all of us are breathing all the time. We're not thinking about it though. We're eating every day. We're
Oh, and it's free.
yeah, it's free. And even like, and you know, and I was thinking when you were talking about sleeping about when I did, I don't know if anyone's gone on the website and seen the show and Heartbroke, when I did the episode with Brian and Chanel, Brian had his revenge bedtime. And it's not just women, it's not just us staying up late because we're so busy with work and the kids, like men do this too, where they are up late on their phones because that's the time of the day where no one needs them and they have control.
Me
And
time.
this is their me time. And so he was feeling all of these side effects from it, cranky, exhausted, frustrated, all of these things. And so but he didn't even think of it as being a result of staying up late, looking at his phone, not getting good quality sleep. He was looking at all the other things that we're demanding from all day. And so it's interesting how people are starting to now think about things like sleep hygiene, where before it got dark, you wound down and went to bed. But now we have a phone, we have our news right in front of us all day long. There's always something, there's that infinite scroll. There's always something. I set my phone, one of the notifications is my bedtime.
Me
It
too.
doesn't give me any notifications after like 9 o'clock at night. And because if I see an email, oh, I'm going to try to check it. I know myself too well. So I like turning that on and having that be, because I don't want to I don't want to, I'll deal with it tomorrow. I'm not going to deal with it well at 9:30 anyway.
Yeah. So
But
at 9:15, at 9:15, my phone it's in my calendar. So it'll give me a calendar thing in 10 minutes, wind down and bedtime.
Mhm.
So I have an hour. But then what I have, because if you have an iPhone or if you have a phone that does automations, my phone automatically will turn off my Wi-Fi and cellular data and Bluetooth at that time. And it won't come on again until I'm supposed to wake up the next day. And it just does it automatically, and it goes into do not disturb. So like there's no way, like it's not happening.
And if you're freaked out, I have it where my husband can get through, or my mom.
Yeah.
And that's it though, because all the other things like the emails can wait till tomorrow. It's just a mindset shift because it does feel like we have to be on call all the time. And we don't. I think we can start to shift things slowly, even if it's just saying, I'm going to try to get to bed at this point. I'm going to sleep with my phone in the other room. I'm going to shut the lights. I'm going to open the window so it's a little cooler in here. Like these are easy, inexpensive or free things that we can do, because it does impact us in every other aspect when we wake up. So
you want to know a couple of other free ones?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's
high
let's find out
hacks.
what are our free hacks?
Free high energy hacks. And then there's a couple that aren't free, but aren't too bad either. So hello, but I mean, everybody fasting. Fasting, people think about fasting as being, oh, this is a weight loss hack. And I don't use fasting for weight loss. I use fasting for metabolic energy health. Like if I keep my body working metabolically flexibly with fasting. So
how long do you fast for?
So sometimes there's occasional longer fasts depending on what my goal is, because different lengths of fast have different physiological effects. All of them will help your body increase mitochondrial efficiency, break down old, not just mitochondria that aren't working, but all cells and proteins in your body that aren't working well, because during fasting, your body's like, oop, need to get efficient. I don't have other stuff coming in. I'm going to break down all of the useless proteins in my body that are causing disease, and I'm going to use them to make new ones. So it's very protein sparing. You don't typically lose a lot of muscle when you're doing that. You lose muscle if you undereat over a period of time, but never go into fasting. But when you're fasting, it's muscle sparing. And your body's like, okay, do I have fat to burn? I'm going to start burning some of that. So you become this metabolically flexible person that can go back and forth between fat and sugar burning, depending on the situation. And it doesn't have to be a long period of time. Most of the time, I'm just eating 3 meals in an 8-hour window. You can still get all the food you need in a day in 8 hours. It doesn't, but it turns out that most people in America are eating over a period of 16 hours. Almost every hour of the day, they're having some kind of calorie being put in their mouth, some sort of energy. It doesn't give our body time to go into this maintenance mode where we have to be mitochondrially efficient. And so what ends up happening is we're no longer able to burn fat. And because of all of the other stressors, when our mitochondria aren't functioning appropriately and other stressors are present, we tend to gain weight, which is a lot of people's concern. Like, I'm gaining weight and I'm not even eating a lot. Well, there's a reason for that. And it comes down to that hormonal side. So fasting is free. And there are easy ways to get into doing that, into training your body into doing that. And I find personally, I hardly ever snack anymore, because when I do eat, I eat enough and I eat enough of the right stuff that I don't get craving or munchy. And when I do, I believe that my body truly is hungry, because now it's sending me appropriate cues. So fasting has totally changed. I used to be addicted to sugar. I used to eat out of boredom. I don't do any of that anymore, because it's just my whole entire mental approach to eating has changed because of the fasting. The other is cold therapy.
Okay.
Right? Free. You can turn the end of your shower into a cold therapy. It don't have to go into an ice cold plunge. You can go to a spa and go into a cold plunge for 11 minutes if you want to, and that's totally going to boost your energy like mad over the next couple of days. But you can do it on your own, and that stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis. So you're going to make more mitochondria. Why? As you burn energy, more energy in your body is better able to thermally regulate. So if you're the type of person who's cold all the time, the second you leave a 70-degree controlled temperature, it's because you're not exercising your body's thermal control. If you don't use it, you will lose it, right? You will become less temperature resilient. So brown fat is in certain parts of our body, and we increase brown fat when we get exposed to cold temperatures, and brown fat has huge amounts of mitochondria. It's very thermally active, and it helps you burn more fat in your body, because if you think of mitochondria as little engines, they need fuel to run. So the more mitochondria you get, you're going to start getting a little more hungry. You're going to have to feed them, or you're going to lose them, but it's not the weight gain kind of eating, right?
Right.
So you can actually just start with those by gradually lowering the temperature at the end of your shower, and stick with it for 30 to 60 seconds. Maybe start out with just 10, and then get colder and colder, longer and longer, until you can do, even 60 seconds, 1 minute at the end of your shower. I love it. It actually, I've come to relish it. But I also will go outside in the wintertime and sit outside and eat my lunch in the cold.
Yeah.
And I might not even put my jacket on. Like, I might just I am, and all I'm thinking is, like, I am somebody who knows how to take care of my mitochondria. And I know that's a geeky thing to say, and maybe that doesn't make you happy, but you could say, listen, I'm doing this because I value having energy to do all the things.
Yeah, no. And I think a lot of us have seen, the CEOs and the cold plunges and the things like that. We don't need that, especially, if we're here in New England, we can just go outside pretty soon. We don't have to, we can turn the water cold in our shower. I think a lot of times we think we have to go all in, like all or nothing. And there are different ways that we can do these things that are, very easy or really accessible to us. So I think that's great. I am a hot shower person. I don't like it, but I did hear, like, probably in the 90s at some point, that if you blast your hair with cold water, like, it would be better, like, looking hair. And so I have been doing that for about like 30 years. Even I heard it's not even true, but anyway, there's always those
but so you're getting other benefits from that.
There you go. At least there's something that I'm doing besides what I read in like 17 magazine years and years ago.
Oh my gosh, I remember that magazine. Holy moly. So the last thing, which is my favorite thing, and I hope we have time to talk about it, but it's really there's two versions of it. One is infrared sauna. So we're talking about light now. So infrared is a type of light. Infrared sauna, you can just buy a sauna blanket. You don't have to go to an infrared sauna and take time and go out somewhere and get naked and sit in a thing and sweat. You can get a sauna blanket for a very low price at home and have it and lay under it. But the nice thing about it is that you're basically detoxing. You're allowing your body to detox. But it also is a mild stressor that increases antioxidant and anti-inflammatory pathways in your body. And it increases blood delivery and oxygen flow to your cells. So it's doing that by it's lowering blood pressure. It's making it easier for your blood to get around. Also allows your blood to get rid of waste products that just accumulate throughout the day more easily. So an infrared sauna is really great. And the thing is if you are losing weight as part of your life, fat contains a lot of toxins, because that's where we store it when we don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So when you lose weight quickly, you're going to release a lot of toxins. You want to make sure that those detox pathways are clear, and infrared sauna is a great way to do it and get all of the high energy hacks on top of it.
That's awesome.
And then the last thing is red light therapy.
Okay.
And that is one, I do it at home. I have a light at home, but a good quality light is going to run at least $600. Or you can go to a spa nearby and you can get a 6 or 12 session package. It's really great in New England because these are portions of the sunlight that we're not getting that are bioactive. They're photobiomodulation. We're supposed to have these regularly, and we're deficient in them because we're not outside in the sun. So you can get them from sunlight. But in the winter, we're not outside in the sun as much. So it's not just vitamin D supplementation in the winter that helps make up our mood and our seasonal affective disorder here in New England, but this red light exposure. And it's extremely healing to our body. But one of the ways it's a high energy hack is that as these free radicals, these oxidants build up in our cells, this thing called nitric oxide binds to a key enzyme inside of our mitochondria, shutting it off. It shuts it off. Red light decouples that and turns it back on. And it's a direct, and red light can be anywhere. And it also helps with wound healing, mood, anxiety, depression. All of these to an extent do, because our brain uses a huge amount of energy. So if we're not doing all the things to support energy in our body, our mood suffers, our brain suffers, and we get this brain fog. We have cognitive, issues, but we also just get really irritable or mentally just not well, right? So all of these things help with mental health in so many different ways. Even just going out for a walk out in the sun, all of the green trees actually reflect a whole bunch of red light back at us because that's what they don't absorb. And so when you're walking around a lot of greenery, you're getting even more of that red light just from a natural source. There's so much more to these, but I know that we only have so much time, but these are
these are very helpful. I think all of these things we could think about, granted, from the ones that are inexpensive or free to the ones that are a little bit higher cost, or maybe we're thinking about what we actually want for the holidays. And maybe we're one of those people that tends to have everything. Maybe something like a red light or a sauna light could be something that is an interesting thing to put on your list this year, especially if you feel like it can help you physically throughout the year. Those are the types of things that I think are potentially good investments for us to make, as opposed to getting to the point where we feel like we need to, leave our jobs, do all these things. Maybe there's things we could do in the meantime, even if they mean investing in some, healthier food, exercise equipment, like all of these things that we could do. Those can be good investments that will pay off, maybe not financially, but when it comes to our mental and physical health, pay off in a lot of different ways. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining me today. How can people find you if they'd like to learn more about your training, your classes, or just follow you for more information on these topics?
Well, one is my Facebook. So I'm Stephanie Pazniokas on Facebook. That is just simply, I think I just put in SJ Pazniokas on there for me. Yep. And I'm just looking at that really quick right now to make sure. Yeah, SJ Pazniokas. And then I also have a link tree, which is at SJP Health Well. And that always tells you what's going on. So if I've got a masterclass, I have a free masterclass coming up in November, 12th to 14th. But I do these regularly. This year is on stress. That's available. I also have my Facebook group where I'm always going live every week, and I'm putting out a lot of information there, and you'll always be able to know what's coming up. And then periodically, I just give away free resources. I also have a free metabolic health audit that I'll just chat with you for 15 to 20 minutes and give you a resource. It's not a sales call. It's just a resource, something that's going to help you target one thing that is really important to you and give you a little bit of guide on that, a first step that you can take there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope that you do take some of these tips and try to incorporate them into this year. I know it can be a very expensive, stressful part of the year for a lot of people, but it doesn't have to be. There's certain things we can do right now, starting today, to start to take control of these things so we can have a bit of a healthier holiday season. Thank you again for listening, and we'll talk again next week. Don't forget to share with friends and family, and together, let's demystify the world of money. Knowledge is the key to financial empowerment.